Good afternoon, everybody. We're back. I'm Andy Murray from WhatCulture.com.
And I'm Adam Nicholas from WhatCulture.com, pretending to be Adam Wilborn once again for another run with some more wrestling news for you all. Stories I've got for you today include what TNT really think of AEW Dynamite. This has been revealed. And on top of that, this WWE legend was potentially meant to be coming back to WWE before lockdown happened.
That was a bit James Richardson, that, wasn't it? After that, or before that, whatever the order is, I'm going to tell you all about the latest with regards to AEW and Renee Young. But first of all, let's talk women's wrestlers and the two that AEW are in negotiations to sign. Good afternoon.
There it is.
Well, let's kick things off by talking about that story then. So this comes from the AEW YouTube. Actually, they held a live stream recently, and on that live stream, they asked the people who were there, which women's wrestlers do you guys want to see in AEW? Who do you want to see turn up? The answers, the most popular answers, were Tessa Blanchard, Chelsea Green, Jordynne Grace, Tay Conti, Ivelisse, and Diamante. Now, in response to this, AEW said, well, we're in negotiations with two of them. So we can remove a couple of these immediately, right? Chelsea Green's under WWE contract, not her. Jordynne Grace is under Impact Wrestling contract, not her. Two gone straight away. We also have Tessa, right, who left Impact in a storm of controversy, I think it's fair to say, and is by all accounts, per the reports, on her way to AEW. So that seems unlikely as well, but it can't be ruled out completely. But the three likeliest names from that group then are Diamante, Ivelisse, and Tay Conti. All three of these names were in the Deadly Draw Women's Tag Team Tournament. Ivelisse and Diamante are in the finals this Saturday night on Dynamite, facing the Nightmare Sisters. So it looks like AEW is just looking to bolster the women's ranks at a time when the division is coming for a fair bit of criticism, it's fair to say.
Yeah, and you could probably argue that that's been one of the biggest ones, isn't it? For all the fantastic stuff AEW has done at this point, and it's been quite a lot, the one thing that seems to be missing is that women's division, and could really do with some investment and some time more than anything else for me. Just needs a lot more time. And but let's be honest, WWE didn't do it overnight, nor did NXT, so these things do indeed take time, and hopefully they can get it right. Some of those, though, would be great to see in there, I think. In fact, the majority of them, let's be honest, but you can only get so many in this world. And also Chelsea Green, I think, by the way, just on a random note, I think she's great. The stuff she's done in NXT so far has been brilliant. It's a shame she isn't going to be there in AEW, but never mind. It is what it is. Shall we move on? And we'll stick with Dynamite, but we'll talk about what TNT think about the show currently. Now, obviously, very recently TNT had a bit of a reshuffle in the boardroom department, and obviously that means that there was a lot of maybe unease, I would imagine, because you don't know what that means for your TV show, especially when AEW is so young and all the fans are so happy with it. Imagine what it would be like to take it away so suddenly. But according to Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer, he says that obviously anybody who's been watching TNT products should realise that there's been a lot of heavy promotion for AEW, particularly during the NBA shows that have obviously come back recently. And their return was the reason why AEW has indeed been rescheduled to Saturdays. But it seems like they've done them a good turn and have continued to promote the show throughout those NBA matches. But apparently that is because it is considered to be a prime property. And Meltzer says that while outgoing Warner Media executive Kevin Reilly was the driving force in bringing wrestling back to the network, the organization's CEO, Jason Kilar, isn't an anti-wrestling guy. So it says essentially this is much needed news for the guys who are probably we're probably a little bit worried when all those changes were happening in the back, but it seems that isn't going to be the case. And if anything else, something that might just ease the minds further is that the second show that AEW did indeed speak about doing isn't going to be happening just yet, but there will be an announcement, or certainly there was one to be expected for that sooner rather than later, according to Meltzer, because obviously it'll be interesting to see if they would double down on how much they like this prime property. Andy Murray, that is very good news for AEW fans. I think we can both agree.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you heard the reports of the boardroom shake-ups and the guy coming in being a guy who cancelled boxing and other things from HBO before, you kind of go, oh dear, this isn't great. But at the same time, AEW Dynamite for 7 consecutive weeks has finished in the top 10 shows on cable for the night. It's a very well-performing show for that network in particular, and it outdoes all projections that they had before launch. Common sense decision, really, isn't it? This thing's performing well. here it is, brother. We're not going to scrap something that's, doing well for us.
Absolutely. Bringing those numbers in on Wednesday nights, definitely.
Exactly. Let's stick with AEW and talk about the possibility of Renee Young doing something there. Dave Meltzer, Wrestling Observer Newsletter, has spoken to a source close to the matter who believes that Young going to AEW in some capacity at some point is inevitable, and that's a direct quote. So he writes here that there's no deal between the two parties, and AEW didn't actually know that she was leaving until the news broke. However, there is a chance she could end up there. Now, it's not clear if this means she's coming in for a one-off or signing a more regular contract. There's no kind of breakdown of that whatsoever, but I think it's interesting nonetheless. Meltzer also notes, however, that being a broadcaster in WWE, apparently they are tied to even longer no-compete clauses than a lot of wrestlers, so it would be a while before this could really happen. However, Renee's not going to be short of options. Nope. She's going to have sporting networks coming her way straight away. I said when we talked about the story the other day that I would be astonished if she ended up in AEW full-time. But, her husband's there, Jon Moxley, obviously. So as soon as she departed, people were like, well, that makes sense. And it does make sense. With this report here, I don't think it's a guarantee that she's going to show up, but things are pointing in that direction.
Let's be honest, she's a fantastic presenter across the board, whatever she's done. I mean, I know that people might have given her a bit of stick for commentary, but I think even given the circumstances when she was doing commentary on Raw, she was even pretty decent enough considering the situation. But ultimately, I have all along thought that Renee Young's talents were far ahead of what she was doing at WWE and being useful. Of course, she has a cookbook coming out as well, which I'm sure will keep her busy for the time being. A similar loss to Kathy Kelly, I think, for WWE in terms of losing a very good presenter, but their loss might well indeed be AEW's gain somewhere down the line, or anywhere else, to be honest. She's that damn good. But speaking of people who will be, or potentially could have been coming back, and maybe still will be coming back to WWE, let's talk about one of the legends who was considering coming back for the period just before the whole world decided to get taken over by the ongoing global bastard. Now, Paul Ellering, you may recall, who had a wonderful stint in NXT, obviously a WWE guy prior to this, but a wonderful most recent stint with the Authors of Pain in NXT, and when they came up, he was suspiciously absent, wasn't there? However, he has been talking with the Two-Man Power Trip of Wrestling podcast, and basically said that he was potentially going to be coming back to WWE to reunite with the Authors of Pain, and an idea that was, of course, shut down when the world itself decided to get shut down. Now, in terms of this, whether or not that would have still been involved with the AOP working with Seth Rollins, as they were at the time, that's not quite clear, but ultimately, they've obviously disappeared from TV. I always forget which one's which. One of them got injured and the other one obviously followed suit, but it has happened the other way around as well between Akam and Rezar. They both ended up off TV because the other one has been injured. And ultimately, that kind of throws all of this up in the air. But you might, well, certainly from my perspective, Paul Ellering to return at some point and manage Authors of Pain, whether they're with Seth or not, I would be very for, because I thought he added so much to the act, and I thought it was a big loss when they took him away.
Yeah, I agree. I liked Paul Ellering in that role. I remember at the when he showed up at that NXT TakeOver for his debut a few years ago, I was like, what? Why is Paul Ellering here? He hasn't been in WWE for about 20 years. But it turned out to be a good fit, and I liked him. I liked him in that role a lot. It was a shame that he didn't get to do that on the main roster for particularly long. I think they kind of waved goodbye to him after their debut, perhaps, on their first night. Also, Drake Maverick could piss himself, so it is what it is. But Paul Ellering's a WWE Hall of Famer. He was the Road Warriors / Legion of Doom manager for a long time. Tenured guy in the sport. It'd be cool to see him back, maybe once things calm down. Fingers crossed.
You just want to see him in a shark cage again, don't you? That's what you want to see.
Oh, baby. If there's one thing I love in wrestling, it's well known. It's a shark cage.
It's a good old-fashioned shark cage.
You can't beat it, especially when Enzo's getting oiled up. And let's not talk about Enzo getting oiled up. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. It's been our pleasure. It's been your pleasure. It's been everyone's pleasure. We love you. Have a good weekend. All that nice, stuff you can send. I'm a nice guy, man. I'm a hell of a guy. Underrated factor about me. Send us your Twitter questions on Twitter, funnily enough, at WhatCulture WWE. Once you've done that, you can follow Adam Nicholas at...
It's Adam Nicholas, and you can follow Andy Murray at...
At Andy H. Murray, the H stands for Helder Postiga. He was crap.
Are you sure it doesn't stand for humble?
Well, I am sitting down, so there we go. See you later, friends.
Goodbye, everyone.